Looking at. I'm looking at the Biennale page now on Facebook. Do I need to do anything?
So you on our Facebook, doing something. You should be able to see it. You might be able to see something that's live feed, which are
Oh, there it is. Yes, I see it. Okay, got it.
So you'll be able to see it. So we'll be starting in about a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I look forward to the session. It's going to make me a good start to the day. Get me in the right way.
Everything's okay. We will be starting very soon.
So Quinny, Samuel's going to speak first. Well, I'm going to say a few things. Then Samuel. Let me introduce Samuel to Quinny.
He looks familiar with me as well. Hi, but I don't know where it is. Okay, nice to meet you. I'd like to join you. My name is Art. Hi, Quinny. Okay, this is my contact.
Where's the main stuff? So much.
Stephen. Stephen is going to join us by Skype from San Francisco.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, beauty of technology.
Well, I've done one of these. I presented here on Skype. It seemed to work. But why not? Conferences can incorporate. We don't always have
And we're trying to be sustainable here, right? So
part of the deal.
reduce our carbon footprint. Good stuff.
So the year.
That can be forgiven. That can be forgiven.
I wouldn't like to share.
Yeah, maybe we'll have the we'll be sitting by the beach.
Well, make sure you bring that into your presentation.
So good morning, everybody. Welcome. It is always a Saturday morning, so people are a little bit slow to start, but welcome. Before I start, I think I'd like to ask Eugene to come and say a few words. Eugene is a member of the steering committee of Hong Kong Institute of Architecture, who is the main organizer of this event. So without further ado, I would hand the mic to Eugene to say a few words first. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And thanks everyone for showing up so early on Saturday morning. On behalf of the UADB 2019 Steering Committee and the Hong Kong Institute of Architects, Biennale Foundation, and the co-organizer, Hong Kong Institute of Architects, Hong Kong Institute of Planner, and Hong Kong Designer Association, I'd like to welcome and thank you everyone for joining today's Liveability Symposium. And of course, I'd like to thank Roger, Sarah, and Alan, which I don't see this morning.
You'll be here later.
You'll be here later in the afternoon, for really organizing not just this symposium, but the whole exhibition and event. And actually, to advertise a little bit, this is just the first of many symposium. The exhibition is meant to bring like minds together to showcase creativity, but also I think the importance is actually the dialogue, the discussion, the thoughts that generated through the exhibition and perhaps more direct through the symposium today. And thank you for our sponsor, a key sponsor of Create Hong Kong, and the title sponsor, DBS Bank, and other co-sponsors who made this possible. Because this is an exhibition an event that will last not just a day or a weekend, but it's going to last for 3 months until March this year. So without further ado, I pass the mic to our title sponsor, DBS Bank. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Samuel from DBS Bank. So we are pleased to be the title sponsor of the event this year. So the theme this year is Imagine to Innovate. So Hong Kong has been recognized as one of the most competitive free markets, but we also have a lot of problems behind the scene. So 2019 is a year full of challenges. So we have the China-US trade war and also unprecedented social unrest. And we also have a lot of long-lasting social problems like the unaffordable housing market. So on entering a new decade, we need some innovative idea to solve our problems. So we need to make sure our economic development fits in our identity. After all, our identity lays the foundation of a reasonable plan of our city. So it is also important to strike a balance between economic development and the sustainability and livability. So without a fair living space, we couldn't say our city is a livable city. And in order to overcome these kind of challenges, we need some innovative technologies. So as the best digital bank in the world and in the region, DBS always embrace the culture of innovation. And our motto is live more, bank less. So this doesn't mean you don't have to use our banking services. But that means we should use more of our banking services such that you can have more time, spend more time for your family and your beloved friends. So we hope the event can be a successful one today, and we can explore more how we can develop our city in a more sustainable way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel. I just want to add that it's very apt that Eugene gave the opening speech, because cast our minds back about 14, 15 months. You and I had a very first conversation, and you suggested whether I would like to consider trying to be the curator for this exhibition for the Biennale. So if anything goes wrong, it's his fault. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let's go back to the Biennale. Thank you very much for coming here. And I would like to say that, just to remind you, the theme of the Biennale, whereas 2x2, you would have seen the logos everywhere. I won't want to bore you anymore with that. Basically, if we're interested in all the possibilities that's possible, not the answer 2x2 is 4, but all the different possibilities that generate from imagination. So imagine to innovate. So with imagination, then we can start innovating. And within that, it is split into 3 different sub-themes: identity, livability, and sustainability. Although today's symposium is a livability symposium, we also believe that it's all interlinked. So today we will talk at some stage, the issue of identity will come up, the issue of sustainability will come up as well. So, and today's livability symposium, it's subtitled regional planning. So we'll hear a little bit more about that. It's different guys, it's different names. So, so today, well, first of all, I want you to relax. Lots of things to see. Lots of figures, lots of photos, lots of images, and so on. We're split into 4 sessions. Before we go into this afternoon, then there's an hour's break for lunch, and then there's a networking reception generously hosted by the RIBA Hong Kong chapter downstairs later. So if you can, stay with us. If not, dip in and out. You're most welcome. We'll make available the presentation, so you don't need to scribble notes, because there will be a lot of figures and facts and so on. So enjoy, just relax, and yeah, it's a long day. Thank you. So, whoops, sorry, too quick. Also, thank you for DBS generous sponsorship. With that, not only we enabled us to have these 2 lovely trams floating around on Hong Kong Island. As we speak, there were 2 of them. One of them lights up at the end. The side panel lights up at the night. So I haven't seen them yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing them. But also with DBS, one of the commitment we have is sustainability. So we are doing a sustainability report to see, put our money where our mouth is. How sustainable such an exhibition and such an event is, so that we can pave the way for having more sustainable biennales in the future. So, and we've earmarked some of the sponsorship for carbon offsetting, because we know there are things that we can do a lot better. So hopefully we'll have a roadmap at the end of the biennale, to have a roadmap for perhaps a carbon zero biennale in 2030. Who knows? Let's see what pans out. But there's a reason why I put this up. I just want to, because part of that sustainability audit, we would like to see how much carbon footprint that we've used. So, hands up who's flown in here today. We won't name and shame. Anybody flown in here today? No, that's great, 0%. Great. Anybody took a private car here today? Private car or taxi? Okay, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of, say, 30 people, that's great. Anybody who took a tram? No, obviously not. No, anybody who took a public transport? That's MTR. That's great. That's a majority of you. So I would say, just by my on-the-spot calculation, I would say about 80% by public transport. A few of you. What about the rest? Did you walk? Any? Yeah, we've got a walker. Fantastic. Now, throughout the exhibit, throughout the biennale, we will be doing these kind of, just spot checks to see, just get a gauge of how people, and then at the end we will have a carbon footprint kind of a profile, and then we'll see what we can do further. And also, you will have noticed that at the little corner we have a speaker from the States. He didn't fly in today, but he will join us later on. So we will encourage some online conference as well, and we're live feeding. So anybody who's the other side of the world, obviously he's asleep right now, they can, or in Asia, they can join us right now, or they can go back to our Facebook and have a look at the presentation later on. So we're trying to do our best to make sure that we are kind of saving the planet, so to speak. So thank you very much, DBS. Thank you very much for coming here today. So today's regional planning forum. So I don't want to say too much about it, because if you're wondering what this is, you will find out a little bit more from our first session moderator. The first session of the Biennale, for the Symposium, is really to set the tone. That's what I call a macro perspective. The panel of speakers will give you a framework of what are we talking about in terms of regional planning. Before in the second and third sessions, before we dive into the nitty-gritties of it, let's set the background a little bit. So we have I wouldn't say too much about it, other than the fact that I want to introduce our moderator, Tim Stoner. Tim Stoner is a very good friend of mine. We've known him for a long time, and he has flown in, well, not today, but recently from UK. And I wouldn't say too much about it, because I'm sure you will tell us more about yourself better than I can. So I will hand you the mic and the pointer from this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Morning, everyone. I did fly in. I did have my hand up, but I was hiding behind the column when I did that. Where I come from, yes, it is the morning, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning where I've just left. So forgive me if I pause from time to remember where I am. But it's wonderful to be in the Mills and to actually see this event happening. I've been a member of the international advisory group that Roger, Sarah and Alan put together to organise the Biennale, and we're now seeing it happen with this first event on livability. My honour today is to chair a session which is going to start the day by looking at the macro perspective around the subject of livability. What we mean by macro, I look forward to seeing my fellow speakers describe. One of the benefits of being the title sponsor is that DBS has the opportunity not only to make introductory comments, but to participate in the panel. So Samuel is going to rejoin us and give us a presentation as an economist on some of the larger scale planning issues around the region. Quinny is then going to speak from her perspective as the general manager of the building research establishment in China. And technology is going to bring Stephen over from San Francisco, again, an architect, urban planner with ACON there. But let me just start the session with some initial remarks about my own contribution to the Biennale and thoughts about the subject of livability. The future is going to change rapidly the practices of every professional and every citizen, because technology, our expectations are continuously evolving. That will impact on livability in terms of how we work, for example, the jobs that are going to be there in the future, the rise and the threat of the robot, for example. It's going to change where we live and how we live in terms of the spaces, the technologies that surround us. But it's also going to affect how we travel, our mobility as people. And that's really my interest as an architect, as an urban planner. It's the spaces in between where we live, where we work, or where we study, that will also be changing. And I'd like to share some personal thoughts about the public spaces of Hong Kong and offer some thoughts about the international dimension of the public realm, the place in which life happens between where we live and where we work. And it isn't, I want to suggest, secondary space. The public realm is not just the bit we move through to get to where we want to be. I want to suggest it's primary. The streets and public spaces of our cities are where we create our identity as people, as cultures. At the entrance to the Mills, you will see, as the light falls at the end of the day, a projection on the floor of a map of Hong Kong. And this I will explain in the next few minutes in terms of it being a map of mobility. Not only the mobility of vehicles, but the mobility of people on foot. And that's really where I want to begin, because Hong Kong, I think, is a full spectrum environment for walkability. It's got the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you like, in terms of the quality of the public realm. When it works well, it's sublime. the reason I remember my first visits to Hong Kong in the late 1980s were the beautiful quality, the intense quality of the public space. But we also see some of the ugly, in fact not too far from here, if I can be so bold as to suggest it's ugly, where the public realm of the ground level has been abandoned by traffic engineers who have forced the pedestrians to walk across bridges. And so you end up with this no person's land below. And the impact on economy, the impact on the performance, the productivity of the city is damaging when this happens. We separate our movement flows, we diminish the life of the city. There are parts of Hong Kong at 6 o'clock in the evening on a Friday, underneath the very center of Central, which are empty. How is this in one of the world's densest environments that we have planned it so that there are no people? Just around the corner there are thousands. So how can we be more intelligent about this? I'll be interested to know through, for example, speaking with Samuel before, how software and technology can help us to plan the future more accurately. It's very much my own role in architecture, using technology, using software to try to better predict how places are going to work. Our cities used to be built around main streets where the cars and the people shared the space with beautiful landscape, green boulevards, the Champs-Élysées in Paris. As we have planned them all over the world, not only in Hong Kong, we've put pedestrians into tunnels, into bridges, and we've given the street over to the car. The property values in Paris are the highest on this street. They're the lowest on this street in this other city. So the decisions we make not only damage the quality of our life, they damage the quality of our investments. The history of this goes back to the beginning of the 20th century. The Plan Voisin by the architect Le Corbusier separated people from cars for the first time. The voisin in French means the neighbour. But actually, it isn't a neighbourhood plan. The voisin in France is also an automobile. The Plan Voisin, if there are architects in the room, was sponsored by a car company. And it was deliberately to sell cars. So we are the product of an economic process. Our tightly connected streets in our traditional cities, I'm choosing one from England, have been transformed into separate pieces of urbanism which may look green but are actually full of streets where people find it difficult to walk between these enclaves of housing. We have taken the connected city and turned it into the city of fragmented developments. We can see this happening in Hong Kong. We can see this happening throughout the world. And this damages the very essence, the very livability of cities, which is around those very human processes of communication, interaction, and especially transaction. People doing a deal, whether it's a social deal, becoming friends, or whether it's an economic deal of actually doing some trade. And I'd like to offer the idea that a city is a transaction machine. And if we think about it in those terms as a mechanism, then perhaps we can better understand it. My own organization thinks about cities in terms of spatial mechanisms, and we've built software where we release agents into the spaces of places, flow them around, and generate computer imagery of either buildings or cities that identify the main streets in the hot colors and the minor streets in the cold colors. And we use these technologies as design tools to test plans for new places. Will this plan be hot with lots of movement or cold? It'll be cold. Go back to the drawing board, try a different plan. And then by connecting better, more smoothly, more simply, following natural desire lines, you can make a place that flows for people. Then, as a designer, if you face the streets outwards, like in Paris, not away, like in that other city, you can take advantage of those connections and bring life to places. And this is what we do as a business, master planning, for example, here in Kazakhstan. We understand this impacts greatly on value. I hope Samuel may say more about this, but a disconnected versus a connected place is the difference in just this one case alone of hundreds of millions, billions of renminbi. People are healthier when places are more connected. This modelling works across multiple levels, and our experience has been that when we transform places like Trafalgar Square in London from being disconnected to connected, from being a blank wall to a staircase, that we can bring thriving life to places. Places where people not only move, but where they sit as well. And that sitting down and sharing and interacting is something which I look, in closing these remarks, back to Hong Kong to say, let's look really closely at the streets of Hong Kong, and let's look at just how dominated the streets are by information geared towards vehicles. Everything is about the vehicle. These bright yellow lines are for the vehicle to stop them hitting pedestrians. Do vehicles really need, do the drivers really need to be the most important people all the time? The barriers, the intense barriers, this is the sort of thing you find at a Formula One racetrack. Do we expect people to drive in Hong Kong as if they're on a Formula One racetrack? But Hong Kong has its sublime moments of livability, when things stop and change, and on Sundays when the space is occupied differently. So how, as we come closer to the mills, can we look at these barriers, look at these overhead walkways, and say, is there a different way of doing things? Because they're everywhere, and they're taking over, and we don't need them. It's the traffic engineers who tell us that we have to have them. They're everywhere. And of course, recent events in Hong Kong, well, before we come to recent events in Hong Kong, life tries to fight back. So how can we make the place green as we get to the mills? And recently, as the barriers have been removed, we can see how people are able to cross the road where they want to. Let's learn, let's observe how people are naturally using the city. And then we might put the pedestrian crossings in the right place, and we might do what we've done in other cities of the world and remove those barriers completely. So livability, I'd like to offer, has components. Walkability. We have to start with walking. It's more important than driving. Then sitability. Can we actually stop to transact? Breathability. Like that little sapling. How can we make the city greener? And transactability. That's the essence of livability. It's coming together to do something. It's why we are in cities. So I hope these comments are useful. I will pass in a moment to our next speaker. And after we've all made our comments, we'll try and find some time to have some thoughts and discussions on this process. So thank you for now, and over to Samuel. Thank you.
Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry about this.
Samuel, are you able to start?
Yeah, sure.
And then we'll bring the slides in.
Sure. Okay.
So when we are talking about our city and our region, so we are talking about the Greater Bay Area, which has been, the plan has been announced last year. So when we talk about this, we have to understand the macro backdrop of constructing this area, this region. So it was really partly about the trade war between US and China. So the first phase of the trade war, the deal is going to be concluded in the next few weeks probably. But for the second phase of the trade war, it's more about technology, whether the US will continue to provide some core technology for the China's technology development. So this remains a question. And also, it is also about the financial market openness. These are some things that China and US quite difficult to reach an agreement on. So with the core technology design still on hand of the Western world and the manufacturing of the chips and semiconductors still on hand of Taiwanese companies, this is really important for China to establish their own Silicon Valley of the East in the Greater Bay Area, Hong Kong and Shenzhen and Guangzhou and Macau and the other Greater Bay Area cities. So for the Greater Bay Area, there is a clear division of labor because each of the cities has a very strong identity of themselves. So for example, Hong Kong, of course, we all know it is a financial center. We do a lot of offshore renminbi businesses. We raise a lot of funds and loans for the Chinese corporates and help other foreign investments to enter the Chinese market. And then for Macau, of course, this is a very important leisure and entertainment center and also Portuguese business center. And then for Shenzhen, as we all know, Shenzhen has a 3 to 4% GDP is focusing on R&D, research and development. This is very important that a city, for a city to develop its technology sector. And then for Guangzhou, this is also a very important business center, and the rest of the Guangdong area has very good foundation for advanced technology and advanced manufacturing. So, so as for the success case of Greater Bay Area, whether Hong Kong or the GBA can be successful, we have to think about a few things. If we look at the, say, San Francisco Bay Area and other success cases like the Tokyo Bay Area, what is the common factors that we can we share? So, for example, let's take the U.S. one. So there are quite a few very good universities like the Ivy League, Stanford. So these provide a lot of talents for technology development, and then they have what they have is a state lead funding. A lot of U.S. technology projects are under the instruction of the military and also the state. And just like and for China itself, the venture capitals are also investing in projects under the state instruction. So these are some of the common factors between U.S. Bay Area and also the China Bay Area. And also, what is important is that there is a very strong capital market in New York, and also there's strong capital market in Hong Kong. So because if we look at the, we want to make a success case for the technology sector, we need an early initial funding from the financial market, and we also need an exit strategy for these early investors. So the capital market, the IPO services of Hong Kong can also be a important factor of making the successful Greater Bay Area. So as for educational institutions, of course, Hong Kong has 4 out of 4 top 100 universities in the world as well. So these education institutions also cooperate with China, with other Chinese institutions as well. And as for the physical connectivity, as we all know, we have the Hong Kong, Macau, and Zhuhai Bridge, and we also have the express rail link. These are the things connected Hong Kong and other Greater Bay Area. With those strong connectivity, just like Tim said, that it is really difficult for region to integrate and to develop the economy. So this physical connectivity of this region is already been developed. So we foresee that there will be more traffic between these cities, especially labor mobility. So as the government has already set out the plan, there will be more labor mobility between these cities. Say that Hong Kong people can easily find a job in China, and China citizens can come home to work. So these are the things, these are the institutional connectivity that help the Greater Bay Area to success. So let's move on to the technology side of the Greater Bay Area. So Hong Kong is set to be another smart city. So on entering a new decade, a successful city or region has to be a smart city. So now Hong Kong has a smart airport. So if you go to the pass through the border, pass through the immigration, there are the e-tunnel and also a facial recognition machine for easier immigration. So all these kind of things would help help Hong Kong to integrate with China and also integrate with the world better. And also, say for the medical services, there is also some new technology from the hospital to save your medical records, and you can also easily access your medical record on apps or whatsoever. And also there will be some new technology for the traffic. So in the future, when we have 5G technology, we foresee that there will be unmanned vehicle as well. So these are the things that can boost the economic development in the future and make everyone has a better life with less focus on your travel, focus on what you really need to do. So and last but not least, the Hong Kong is has a very good legal foundation. So when we talk about technology investment, we need to protect the product, right? We don't want our product to be easily copied by our competitors or other people. So Hong Kong has a very good legal foundation and a lot of intellectual property lawyers. So this can help our technology business owner to protect their businesses. And after with all these kind of things and with all the financial system in Hong Kong that help the unicorns to raise fund, help the unicorns to go public, and help the business owner to manage their wealth after their business go public. These the Greater Bay Area can have a very good ecosystem that you initiate some new technology project, and then you exit, you earn your money and exit strategy and invest in a new project. So this is a very important ecosystem of the city, and together with the physical and institutional connectivity, we believe that the Greater Bay Area can be a very successful case that can become a first-tier Bay Area. But what we have to really think about is the capital movement within the area, because if you look at the other Bay Area, there is only one legal system and one currency system. So this is some of the obstacles that this Greater Bay Area has to overcome in the near future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Samuel, both for your remarks and also your attitude to speak without your slides. Is like jumping out of a plane without a parachute, but you managed to fly without one, so well done. We have a technology problem. I managed to burn out the projector. The projector has a technical fault, so we're going to make a 5-minute pause. Everyone can get up, do a bit of walkability and breathability. We're going to hook up another projector and come back in the room.
It's coming back to life, actually. It's just, if you bear with us for 2 seconds, maybe Samuel can just, oh no, it's stuck.
We'll give it one last try.
Yeah, it's stuck. It froze at the, this was your presentation,
yeah.
which for some reason is frozen at.
I think as soon as everyone gets up, it'll fix itself. don't you think? Yeah. Let's have 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone. And apologies for this.
Well done, Samuel.
I have been talking about this for many times, so
Really interesting. I'll bring you back in later on when you come in.
I think the slides will be back to life. Yeah.
If we have no slides. You didn't flick a switch when you were out there.
If we don't have an objective, are you able to talk to Let's fix something. Just be prepared with a plan B. We'll try and fix it, but if not...
Okay, everyone, as I predicted, as soon as you stood up, we seem to have a technology solution. Good news. So come back in a couple of minutes and we'll be ready to start again.
Samuel, do you want to show any of your slides? Are there any particular ones that you want to focus on?
Is he going to go through the slides? Yeah. Might be.
Just do that. Yeah. And it's good to have the specific representatives. I think everyone can see projects. Yeah. Do it. We can do it. Joe. Samuel's going to just focus on one or two of these. Thank you. Roger, are we good to go?
Yes, we're good to go.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
That worked. Just leave and then it'll work.
That's life. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans, isn't it? That's what the great man said. Samuel is going to just come back and focus on a couple of his slides to expand those points, I hope, around connectivity and technology and the legal system. And we'll give the floor back to Samuel. I think everyone's more or less back in their seats now, so the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, again. So I just want to share a couple of slides with you. So this is something that I also want to mention is the green financing of Hong Kong. So when we are talking about a livable and sustainable city that we want to live in, we want to have a good environmental protection, right? So, but then from business perspective, it is difficult to focus on environmental protection without sufficient funding. So in Hong Kong, Hong Kong has also been a pioneer of green financing. So Hong Kong, as we see from the chart here, the green bond issuance has been rising in the past few years, and there are a lot more green ETFs, some other financial products about environmental protection too, is going to go public soon as well. So in the past few years, we have some big names in China issued green bonds in Hong Kong, like the Tianjin Railway Transit Group and also the Beijing Capital Motorways Investment Company. So these are some of the big names that issue some green bond in Hong Kong. And in fact, environmental protection is not just the focus of Hong Kong, it's also the focus of the Chinese central government as well. So in order to push through this initiative, we need the financial market, the capital market of Hong Kong. So this is, in fact, a very important sphere of a livable city. And just to I want to share a little bit more on the technology and innovation side of Hong Kong. So if we take Hong Kong and Shenzhen together as a technology cluster, so this cluster is the world's second largest based on the Global Innovation Index. And the Hong Kong government indeed has already announced a big budget last year on investing into the Hong Kong technology sector. We will be having the biggest science park in the Lok Ma Chau district. So this will be an important head start for the Hong Kong technology development. So right now the R&D only takes up around 0.7 to 0.8% of Hong Kong GDP, which is much less than the 3 to 4% of Shenzhen. So Hong Kong has to catch up with this trend in order to make us a livable city. So we believe in the next couple of years, Hong Kong can ride on some of the development in the Greater Bay Area to develop our smart city. So just want to elaborate a little bit more on the smart city side. So aside from the smart airport and unmanned vehicles, we also have a very strong mobile penetration rate of Hong Kong. So the mobile penetration rate is over 240%, which means we have more than 2 mobile phones for each person. Okay. So and then we have over 20,000 Wi-Fi hotspots across the street, which means we can access to internet anytime, even you don't have a mobile data plan, which is not really possible anyway. But and what we need to think about is in the Greater Bay Area plan, there will be no more long distance call between these 9+2 cities, and there will be no data roaming between these 11 cities. So this is a very important integration between within the region, because it will be, if we want to integrate with each other, we need to lower the monetary cost. We need to lower the transaction cost. So in the next decade of a smart city decade, we really need this to happen in the coming future. So that is the few slides I would want to mention on top of what I have spoken just now. So I will hand over the stage to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. That was actually very useful. I think those last points around reducing the barriers by removing long-distance calling and avoiding the data roaming charges are welcome to all of us. In terms of mobile phone penetration, my other 1.4 mobile phones are in a drawer at home with a cracked screen. Is that what's behind these statistics, I wonder? But fascinating to have those. I'll hand straight on to Quinny Lee, Building Research Establishment, to take forward the discussion on macro livability.
Thank you, Tim. Hi everyone, my name is Quinny. I'll tap into this topic from our perspective, which is through the international benchmarking and best practice and skills for the future to build the sustainable, resilient future city. Because BRE is such a unique organization, I don't think I can go into the topic without kind of try to explain ourselves first. So we are BRE. A lot of people have mistaken us as the British, British Research Institute or Enterprise, which is quite close to who we are. Don't get us wrong. But we call ourselves the Building Research Establishment. And so this is actually our campus in Watford, which is an hour outside of London. So it's consisted of many testing labs, research labs that house a lot of our scientists and researchers on site. So we still are the first building environment research center in the world. We're set up by the UK government in 21 to improve the quality and performance of buildings in the UK. So we were privatized in 1997, now owned by the BRE Trust, which is a charitable trust. We house about 400 plus professional research and scientists, We also form links to over 250 other experts through our associates and external partnerships. So we are the largest UK charity dedicated only specifically to research and education in the built environment. That's why I'm standing here talking about the future city as well. So we have a long history, so luckily next year, if Brexit doesn't get in the way, we will celebrate our 100-year anniversary. So it's just an interesting fact, the very first building standard, it came out of our lab, which is the lift limit by manual labor, and it's still used today. Just kind of drawing the background of who we are, so it links to our focuses in this topic. We also acquired the fire research station. That's why 30% of our expertise goes into safety, especially fire safety. We established and created the very first sustainability building standard called BREEAM, which is the very long BRE environmental assessment method. We will change that name somehow. So why I'm here, why my team here in China, from the British Building Environment Research Center, is because in 2012, primarily because Qiang actually visited us in our London office, the London headquarters. So what was supposed to be 40 minutes visit became a 4-hour visit. So not a lot of you guys know, but primarily actually had a background in material science, so he was very nerdy and very interested in test labs. So after the visit, he was so impressed and interested in what we've done the past decades in the UK. He gave us 3 requests, one of which is to help the China 3-star, or the Liveability label, at that time was still just developed. And so he wants us to come to China and help to assist to make it better, improve it, and globally benchmark it. That's what we did. And second and third one would be to use our network and as a platform to bring the UK expertise in the building science and environment industry to China, as well as bring the innovation park idea concept to promote more innovation in this built environment industry. So exactly what we did. We, as a very traditional research laboratory and center, quietly impacted the world for the past decades in about 80 countries. We don't advertise ourselves very broadly because of our nature, but we do try to work with local governments to help them with what we are expert in. So I was asked to kind of set the ground in a macro perspective and just set the topic a little broader. So I don't think I can go into that. What we can provide to help before we talk about very briefly the global challenges, especially in cities. So this came from one of our reports. We're actually one of the biggest publishers in the UK as well, so we do a lot of studies and we publish them. So this came about I think 2-3 years ago. Some of these numbers get outdated, but I think you can see what we kind of predicted a few years ago. It's very interesting. So it says socially challenges. So growth, we have at that time 1.3 million people moving to the city every week. Just came out about a few days ago on Bloomberg. So PwC just updated this number to 1.5 million people moving to the city every week. So that brings a lot of challenges socially in terms of inequality, aging population. We will have older population growing faster than the total population in practically everywhere in the world. That brings a lot of also culture changes, changing citizens' expectations, and how service should be provided. Environmentally, I won't go into this too much because we'll hear it all the time on the news about climate change, energy consumption, overuse of our natural resources, especially in cities, consume 95% of our natural resources, waste, water, biodiversity, air pollution, which most heard about in China, of course, and India. Technology, so challenger will be in transparency, growing expectation for transparency in data and reporting, decision making through the use of technology, open data, right? Disruption, we have digital companies coming in, and in the sharing economy, like the Airbnb and Uber, trying to disrupt the city services and bring a lot of political issues. Economic, so a lot of the infrastructure, that's one of the things we focus on, is bringing infrastructure standards. So a lot of old infrastructure needs to be revamped, and a lot of new infrastructure needs to be built under newer standards and more updated standards. Of course, managed demand, very obvious. So more data on the challenges. So cities that have more than 1 million people by 2030 would be over 600. And mega cities, most of them actually will be in China, in Asia, and are still in Asia, over 10 million people by 2030. That means cities become more important to solve all of these global challenges and help create healthy, sustainable, resilient, and prosperous places for majority of us. Of course, we can brush it under the carpet to say that every city has the same challenges. That's not true. We have emerging cities would have different challenges than mature cities. Like San Francisco would have different challenges in Shanghai or Bangkok or Dubai. So we have to acknowledge that. So also, the definition of livable city will be very different, I think. It keeps on evolving itself. This is something that circulated in my, so I belong to the building performance group under BRE. We have many groups. So this circulated by my boss yesterday. So it fresh came out of Cushman & Wakefield on kind of the demographic changes in the next 10 years, because we just hit the new decade. So it becomes very relevant. So some of these striking numbers, very interesting. For example, I'm a millennial, if you can't tell. But so the oldest millennial will turn 50. That's very scary to me right now. In 2030. So millennials, some of you are, as me, we have different wants and needs. We're very different than our last generation, baby boomers, or the next generation, Gen Z. We are somewhat relevant, and we're okay with smart devices. So does that mean that a livable city for us in the next decade would be a smart city, or something else? And the baby boomers, our parents, will reach retirement age in the next decade. Does that mean that to them a livable city would be a city that provides a lot of healthcare, or transportations, or even homes that dedicate to certain diseases like dementia? So things like 40% of millennials own their own home, or 30% of millennials place the environment as their top concern. So which means we will focus on more sustainable green cities, and how do we bring that? And Gen Z will be entering the workforce. They'll be a majority of the workforce. And what do they really care about at that time? This I just saw yesterday, I think, on Bloomberg. So this is to say that we also have megatrends, I think, that would impact business sectors within these megacities in the next decade. So we have to constantly prepare ourselves for a decade of change and transformation. So if you're interested, you can go on Bloomberg right now you find this, which talk about society, consumer, and technology, and how we do that. So I'm speaking very fast, I'm sorry, because I have 20 minutes. But BRE, as a very unique company, does a lot of things, because our research covers every element within the built environment. So building science, city, so there was so much. So because of our topic is livability and city, future, sustainability, identity. So I categorized 4 things that we, as a research institute, can offer and offered in the past. So sustainability, talk about the millennial really care about the future city. It's livable because it's green, and we come in from a benchmarking and standard perspective to try to benchmark globally and preserve that data. Safety, we talked about fire safety earlier, so we do write a lot of safety standards for fire, for building security. etc. So that's very important as well. Productivity. So we have more and more people moving to the large cities, but we have same amount of resources. So how do we make it work? It's through increasing the productivity of many elements within the city. And last but not least, I think education is quite important. Not a lot of people touch on that, but we have the BRE Academy, which we've run about 30 years already. So it provides the future generation professionals, students within universities to continue education in all of these relevant areas that can support the building, the designing, the funding of future cities. So I'll just go through this very quickly. Benchmarking sustainability. So that's actually what we do best. So a lot of people asked the value of benchmarking. Sometimes it's such a boring topic, but what I want to emphasize is the importance of benchmarking. Especially here is it allows for comparison of building performance, in this case, the city performance on a global basis. So you can compare cities with different, with same typology, within the same typology on a like-for-like basis. And that'd be very useful. I won't go into this too much because I have 5 minutes left, but also we try to globally align BRAM, which is the standard that we wrote. There are many others in the world, but we were the very first one, and it's completely science-based versus consensus-based, so that we can keep on updating ourselves and stay relevant. So we already benchmarked with the globally with the UN SDG goals. Also, what we're trying to do is from kind of the international perspective, benchmarking perspective, we try to align with individual countries. So BRAM actually operates in about 86 countries already. So we are still mostly applied in the world in terms of building standard. So earlier this year, we signed an MOU with the China end and did a dual certification program with the China 3-star. So through this, we actually could make each of the standards very robust and very international. Of course, upstream, we try to make sure that we have responsible investment. Our assessment tool can feed into ESG reporting, as well as helping green financing to secure capital for more sustainable developments in cities. So Green Print is something that was developed, assessment methodology that was developed for cities. So this is kind of not relevant anymore because we have a newer standard, but this is how we started. So these are categories under this methodology that we look at: climate change, resources, transport, ecology, business, community, placemaking, and building. So you can see this is not only an assessment method for environmental, but also social and economic aspects of cities. What we're working on right now intensively is putting together and finalizing the Healthy City Index. So it provides an assessment of global cities against a set of indicators that measure the impact of urban environment and health and well-being, which is what the millennials and Gen Z care about, and also baby boomers as well. So these are the categories: air quality, food access, green. So a lot of these that would feed into, if they work together, they will feed into the betterment of the health and well-being. So I think the data was in the US, only 20% of health and well-being came from, or the improvement came from healthcare, but the other 80% is the result of all of these combined as a solution. And that needs to be driven by policy, government, and many others. So another scale is the BRAM community, which on top of building acts as a larger scale assessment tool for communities within the city. We also made it successful in China as well through our collaboration with the China end. So this is the very first eco-city under this assessment tool in Nanjing, China. And this is quite interesting because this kind of fits between community and city and above building. Scale is the sustainable infrastructure we call SQL. This is one of the earliest and only one of two for now in terms of system assessment rating system that's for infrastructure, civil engineering, and public spaces, public realm. So this has been applied in Hong Kong before, and these projects achieved good, which is okay for this assessment tool, and we've been working with the Hong Kong Development Bureau and Hong Kong GBC on localizing the standard and apply it for all the infrastructure projects in Hong Kong. And we also have an eye to bring this together to the BRI and GBA area through our collaboration. So that's something we've been working on with the Development Bureau quite actively this year. Just some of the cases. The Crossrail is a very famous project from London that uses not only reduce the carbon footprint, but also reduce the cost of the project itself. So this is what we've been working on in China. Is we were actually the first foreign company to sign an MOU with the Xiong'an New City. A lot of people might or might not know, I'm sure you know in this field, is that this is the newest city that will be basically absorbing all the central government officials from Beijing, trying to alleviate all these transportation, etc. issues in Beijing. And they will relocate a lot of them into Xiong'an New City. And I think on the policy paper it said it's supposed to be built for 1,000 years, literary translation. So which means they really have to have this forward thinking for this new city to be built. Still, I think, stuck at the city planning stage, but it's going to happen. And we were engaged as a foreign assistant to help Xiong'an to come up with the Green City Standard. So in that way that we can use our expertise to help the China government to build more resilient future cities. We have a few others on safety, on productivity and education, but I already summarized earlier in the slides, so I won't go into further. But if you have questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Quinn. That was excellent. And we're going to test our technology even further right now. Those of you who were with us earlier will know we've already had one issue, but I'm absolutely confident that we're about to make a Skype connection to San Francisco to bring in Stephen Engblom from ACON there, who's an architect and urban planner. And he's on the screen in front of us. Are we live? And Stephen, can you hear me, and can I pass over to you?
The connection is a bit slow at the moment. If you just hold on for 1 second, let me just
What I will say is that before you all arrived this morning, some of us were here very early testing the technology, and guess what? Perfect. No problems at all. We spoke to Stephen, it was as clear as anything. The slide projector worked.
it's got just 1 second, he's diving in again.
Stephen, can you hear us? We can see your slides.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Great. Perfect. We can hear you now.
Okay, great. And do you have my presentation on the screen?
Yeah, not yet. Are you going to share your screen?
Yes, I just try to. Let's see.
Stephen, if you just hold on 1 second now, it's a bit too loud. I need to just adjust this volume a little bit first.
Okay. Testing.
It's a bit too loud, and we try to just adjust it.
Okay. Let me know when you want me to say something else.
Could you? I think we'll use a low tech. Could you try it now, Stephen? Okay, Stephen, you can speak now. Hello. Oh, this is not very good. Sorry about this. Okay, do you want to try now, Stephen? I think we're set to go.
Okay, it's that coffee time again. Because let's just stand up and have a walk around. We'll sort this out. And I would do some Q&A, but if I do Q&A now, the audio will interrupt that audio and it won't work. So have a cup of coffee and we'll bring you right back. Sorry about this.
You know my relationship with my company is outside of this. It worked very well. But Dr. Stephen Law, PhD student, he's a more senior member of staff. So, Charles,
I'm on my phone. I'm trying to use my computer.
I'm back.
Could you just show us your slides now? Because people are just having some coffee. You should be able
Okay, just try. Does that work?
yes, that works.
I assume you're probably want to switch to the slides on my page, right? Yeah, okay.
Is that on? Stephen, could you say if you watch us the test?
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Okay, everyone, I think we can make a start again. So please take your seats. We've got a connection working. Stephen is on the other end of the line. Roger, are we good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Very good. Stephen, welcome again from San Francisco. It's nice to have you on the line, and I'm going to hand over to you and let you make your contribution. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just take order here and hand over to Stephen Engblom in San Francisco. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. Is everything working okay there?
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I've enjoyed the presentation so far, very thought-provoking, and I appreciate the invitation to be with you this morning. So when Roger emailed me about this topic about regional planning and how to think about both hardware and software of livability, so the nexus of those topics is quite interesting. And as a planner, one of my favorite topics or thought pieces that I've ever read about is this idea that a gentleman named Cesar Marchetti established, this idea that cities historically have always operated in a time span of 1 hour. So if, and I'll just throw that out as a topic, sort of a thought-provoking idea that I'm going to frame some thoughts around this very big topic that we're discussing this morning. So that concept is that, way back in history, even before, when people would work, they would walk out into the fields and back into the city, and that the city was then defined, 1 hour, however far you could walk by foot. And then as technology changed, so then there was the, horses, and then trains, and then in the 20th century, Tim talked about the sort of devolution of the structure of the city due to the car. And I think that now, at this juncture in time, we are seeing a lot of new technologies happening at the same time when we're struggling with big cultural issues like social inequities and also the resilience topic. So I really, I'm an optimist at heart, so I believe that if we can commit ourselves to some big thinking and regional planning, perhaps that our concept can come back and help us think about how we construct cities in the post-global economy in the fourth industrial revolution. So that's how I started thinking about this topic. So I'm going to show a short video about how I believe that thinking about cities needs calls us to action to think about how can we fix some fragmented approach to city making. So.
Stephen, the sounds are coming through your end?
Let me check here if I did something wrong. Let me try again, and I'll back up the video. Can you hear it now?
Perfect.
More people than ever before living in a city. Cities face more demands. More than half of the world's population now lives in a city, but more than half of them live in a city with less than 500,000 residents. Phoenix has half the population of Hong Kong, but its built-up area is 5 times bigger. In Hong Kong, there could be more than 30,000 people living per square kilometre. It's over 10,000 in New York, with 5,000 in London, and close to 1,200 in Beijing. Hong Kong's neighbour, Shenzhen, has experienced a population growth of over 3,000% in the last 30 years. In the last 30 years, Detroit's population has shrunk by 40%. The world's largest 40 cities combined create as much wealth as the entire United States. The 10 largest Latin American cities total more wealth than the whole of Africa. In sub-Saharan Africa, more than 200 million people live in urban slums. In Mumbai, there are 5 million. London has 5 times more green space per person than Tokyo and twice as much as Beijing. Yet a Beijinger emits almost 4 tons of CO2 per year, while a Londoner emits nearly 10. In 2011, in Christchurch, just one earthquake damaged 45% of buildings. One flooded.
Stephen, if you can hear us, we've just lost the connection to your video, so the download's not working at our end, but maybe I'm coming through to you. Maybe you could stop it and we'll just do voice. So what do you reckon, everyone? It was going well, wasn't it? It was going so well. If it comes back on, I'll sit down and shut up. But in the meantime, what I thought is that we need to respect time. And this session was due to finish at 11:30, and I know other speakers are just, they can't wait to get up on this stage. We may not be the most smooth session of the day, but I'm sure we will be challenged to be the most exciting and engaging and entertaining. What I will do actually in the 5 minutes that are left to us is ask a couple of questions of our speakers and invite you perhaps to ask a question for yourself. I've got a question for Quinny and for Samuel, because we've lost Stephen, so let's make it up without him. Technology, really simple question. The mobile phone has changed so much about our lives in the last 10 years. What to you is the one or maybe the two technologies that are going to do something like that? What are the game changers?
So what about some new technology like the mobile phone? Well, what I think is probably watches. So as we all know, we have watches like the Apple Watch or other. Oh wow, there's one there. So yeah, so watches can maybe somehow replace this like maybe quite a few function of our phone already, and it can even track our heartbeats, you know, all about biological characteristics of our body. So I think watches can be one of the most disruptive technology in the coming decades.
Great. Thank you. So the wearables. Okay, to you, Quinny, how are we all going to be using technology differently?
So I'll speak from, once again, the building science sector. So we developed tools, of course, digital tools. So 5 years ago, BRE research had 0% focus on digital tools for construction buildings. Now that 15% of our profit revenue comes from digital tools that developed. One of which, under earlier section, I didn't show is productivity. For example, construction safety is a huge issue. It's mainly focused in the UK in the past. So we developed this tool called Yellow Jacket, which the government is very interested in adopting as well, which is only on your mobile phone. So high skill or low skill workers on your construction site can use this app on your phone to track construction safety. And this record, this data could go onto anybody in this supply chain. And you could also use this data to compare and make improvements on construction site in terms of safety.
Great. Does anyone have a question for any of our panelists? I'm going to wait for anyone else other than Roger before, otherwise, Mr. Curator.
I have actually a question for Queenie, because a couple of things that caught my eyes. First of all, the Healthy City Index. Actually, it's related to the sequel, sort of the sustainability assessment. I saw a list of pollution, the assessments. How do we assess the health of our soul? I mean, it's interesting, because I think the reason I ask that is I hope by the end of the session, it's an unfair question to you. I think that for the Biennale, one of the things that we want to ask is, well, we've got all these indexes. We can measure pollution, we can measure how long it takes from A to B, but how do you measure livability? How do you measure your soul? How do you feel? Maybe you feel better actually taking longer to go to work. So how do you measure, livability in Hong Kong? People might want to actually say, well, we want to take longer to go to work so that I can read a book, or something like that. These, I think, I would like to, not just at the end of this Biennale, symposium, but at the end of the Biennale, get people to think more about the health of our soul, the function of our soul. This idea about form follows function, that's great, but the soul also has a function. I think that's the important thing. In this sort of discussion, we would like to bring out, and that's the homework for you, Tim, after the afternoon.
You got one?
I think maybe Tim, you're the better one to talk about this. You're asking the scientists and researchers to talk about ourselves. I'm not too sure on that.
Well, for my part, it was interesting. Lok Kan at the back of the room asked me a very similar question. Lok Kan Chow, who's an architecture graduate at UCL, and I asked a very similar question to yours, Roger, about emotion and feeling. And I responded by connecting him with cognitive neuroscientists who are wiring up brains and trying to understand what is firing in our heads. Because it is science. Emotions have a degree of scientific relevance, and it isn't everything. Science can't answer everything, but the cognitive neuroscientists and some of the work I showed in terms of the spatial scientists are working together now. So when you walk into a room and space opens up in front of you, what's going on in your head? What are you thinking? What are the neural pathways, and how do those connect to the urban pathways? So to answer my own question, I think it's the technologies around this question that might bring some of the art and some of the science together to help us think about livability.
Any other questions? Eugene.
Actually, it's not a question, but maybe I want to answer your.
Very good.
Your
Give me the answer.
question.
$6 million
It's
question.
technology actually that we can use to answer your question, and it's not the science that we kind of coop up in our little lab to for a few scientists to come up with the answer, but it's in our internet, right? I mean, it's social media. How do you gauge our emotion? How do we use that data information to affect choices, to affect our elections, to affect Brexit, right? I mean, all that already happened. So isn't that?
Don't look at me.
Anyway, I mean, I would say the commercial world do this much better than our scientific world. They have surveys, right? You go to a hotel, they send out surveys. How much do you like their service and how they can improve their service? Our government doesn't do that, right? There's our government, they may employ a consultant to come up with some data set to define what they will do next, but that's just a projection. There's no real proof that this will work. But if you look at trends, you can see there's in the market, in the world, all this is happening. All those data are collected live.
Roger, can I just come in on this, because I want to close out my session and bridge to you to start the next session, and I think, Eugene, you helped to build that bridge, talking about the government, because the next session is on Hong Kong. It's the Hong Kong perspective. We've been through the macro to a degree, and I just want to thank all of you for bearing with what was a technologically challenging session, but I want to thank Stephen, who I hope is still with us on Facebook Live. Stephen, I'm sorry we couldn't get to the end of your presentation, but I believe if it's acceptable with you, we'll share it with everyone, and everyone will be able to see that splendid video in all of its glory with the other remarks that I know you wanted to add. I'm sorry we've lost you. To Quinny and to Samuel, thank you for starting the day off, and I'll hand back to you, Roger, to take us forward through the day. Thank you, everyone, indeed.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you very much again for bearing with us. And also, we make a commitment to make the technology work. So next time, we'll make sure it'll be a lot better, and we will have more online speakers. So what I would like to do is I would like to introduce you to the second session, Hong Kong Perspective, and we're very pleased to be working with the RIBA Hong Kong chapter, which is hosted by a host of speakers, which is called by the RIBA Hong Kong chapter. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Wendy, who's been instrumental in putting all of this together. So thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Robert. Hello, everyone. So
So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of RIBA Hong Kong chapter, I welcome you to Symposium Session 2, where we will focus on the biennale themes of livability, sustainability, and identity, especially from a Hong Kong perspective, within its wider geographical context. So, a bit about the RIBA. RIBA has 2,500 members in the Asia-Pacific region, thousands of which are in Hong Kong. So this is the greatest number outside the UK. Since its establishment in 2012, the RIBA Hong Kong chapter has showcased in various events many of our local members' work, situated both within Hong Kong and its wider context. With a mission statement to support RIBA members and instigate knowledge exchange in the Asia-Pacific region, discourse relating to Hong Kong urban planning and strategic edge is of key interest to the chapter. So, in light of RIBA's collaboration with UK DIT, Department of International Trade, for an event during the Business of Design Week, RIBA Journal published an article in July 2019 written by its publishing director, Helen Castle. The article was titled, Practice Hong Kong Style. Target audiences of this article were predominantly practitioners and architectural practices in Europe looking to understand specific characteristics of Hong Kong's professional and commercial landscape. The article tried to address issues from a European perspective, questions such as what challenges do practices face working in China from Hong Kong? What are the unique professional and cultural conditions that set the region apart from China and the UK? The article goes on to strategically discuss topics of Hong Kong livability, sustainability, and identity in context of Greater Bay Area 9+2 plan, which we just heard about. In today's symposium, RIBA Hong Kong chapter intends to build on Helen's article and explore the same topics, specifically from Hong Kong perspective, in order to address the interests of our local members and friends with deep roots in Hong Kong. So as you will find out shortly, all 4 guests today have very unique Hong Kong stories to tell. So in order to weave together the different threads into a thought-provoking Hong Kong perspective, we need a very well-experienced moderator. So on behalf of Biennale and RIBA chapter, it's with great delight and excitement for me to introduce our esteemed moderator, Mr. Christopher Law, Founding Director of Oval Partnership Limited and Director of the Green, Sustainable and Smart City Action Research Organization Integer Intelligent and Green Limited. Mr. Low is a former committee member of the RIBA chapter, as well as Hong Kong Equity Advisory Board. So with his very wide-ranging experience, I'm sure he'll engage with our speakers in a constructive way today. So without further ado, Mr. Christopher Law.
Thank you. Today we have 4 really distinguished panelists for our this session of the symposium. Now, the symposium is about livability. I think we love livability. It is something that is manageable. It is something that is measurable, and I think it started around 20 odd years ago. City governments around the world started looking at livability and coming up with livability indexes. Now, of course, all that is very good for city administrator, all very rational and scientific. Today, this particular session is the Hong Kong perspective. Now, the Hong Kong experience in the last 6 months is the most challenging one for all of us in this room, who in one way or another either live and work from this city. And I think what happened in Hong Kong in the last 6 months suddenly let people realize that irrespective of how rational, how manageable livability should be, other things get into the way. Identity politics get into the way, civil liberty issues, rule of law, and it suddenly dawned on everyone that it is complicated and it's wide-ranging. Now, whether Hong Kong will get the genie back into the bottle so that we can carry on managing the city in a kind of technical and administrative fashion, or whether Hong Kong move on to a new direction is something that certainly I don't know, and a lot of people are speculating. So to help us contemplate what is really happening to this city, today we have 4 extremely experienced and extremely well-known persons from the capital work industry in Hong Kong. The first person, in fact, I probably shouldn't need to introduce Mr. Donald Choi. Donald is one of the most well-known figure in the Hong Kong capital work industry. He was, need I go on? He was the AP with Foster to build the Chek Lap Kok Airport, and then he was the managing director of Nanfong. He widely speaks on Hong Kong development and construction matters. I also understand that he's extremely, he's actually a scholar. I think he's got numerous academic qualifications. Currently, he is the CEO of Chinatown. I think today, Donald would share with us his view on various Hong Kong livability issues, including housing supply and also, I think, identity issues as well. So, Donald.
Good morning, and thanks for the generous introduction. Again, I would say that I really is Hong Kongers. I love Hong Kong, and I call Hong Kong my home. Again, because many people compare Singapore with Hong Kong, so I would like to start with the question of which city is more livable, Hong Kong and Singapore. And obviously depend on your assessment criteria and what you use to measure, and also depend on your changing priorities. There will be different answer at different time. This is one assessment. The Economic Intelligence Unit 2019 ranking. Over 140 cities are being ranked, and Hong Kong does not do too badly. I think we are ranked 38, actually ahead of Singapore at 40. But I think as Chris mentioned, I think the last 6 months or so, the social unrest has actually changed a lot of how other people perceive our city. And I must confess that this ranking, the assessment was done before the protest. But also, I think the violence of the protest actually, surprised a lot of us. Underneath the simply stable surface of our society, it seems that actually our social system is very fragile. For the health of the in Hong Kong, obviously I think it is a good place to live and call home. Within 5 hours of flying time, we are in contact with over 50% of the world population. The compact city provides a lot of convenience and amenities for us to choose how we want to live. The simple tax system, the rule of law really make business easy to operate in Hong Kong. And again, the diversity of our cultural kind of cosmopolitan background enable us to choose the lifestyle that we want. That is for the privilege. But what about for the rest? I think for the less fortunate and the disadvantaged population in Hong Kong, it is very unaffordable to them. For an average family, they have to save 21 years of their income to be able to actually obtain a place that they can call home. And that place is no larger than a garage. Is this something that we really want to encourage, where the majority or significant portion of our city live in very congested and cubicle with no privacy? Is this the way that we want? So it is really disheartening to note that despite Hong Kong being one of the most affluent cities in the world, our solution to circumvent the unaffordability housing is really to build smaller and smaller. Hong Kong has one of the smallest living area per capita in the world, the smallest in Asia for sure. We are even having living area smaller than Tokyo. And this is the average living area. For the people who live in public kind of subsidized housing, is even worse than 161 square feet. Their average is at 124 square feet. So my kind of observation, and I want to like to put forward, to generate the discussion, is that Hong Kong is really sinking into kind of the model of a behavioral sink. And if we continue on our present path of development, and it is not a pretty path. I think for a lot of you, as old as I am, you will remember Ron Koolhaas' book, Delirious New York in 1978. Really he talks about kind of a retroactive manifesto for Manhattan, where he sees New York as the urban stage for the terminal stage of Western capitalism. And I would say that Hong Kong actually has further evolved and even further on that path. And it's become the ultimate experimental lab of capitalist urbanism. And in an article published by John Capone, I think some of them know that famous article, population density under social pathology. He talked about overpopulation effect on the breaking down of social structure. And it is something that I think we need to be very much aware of. He continued, John Cahoon's whole life has been devoted to studying overpopulation effect. And in his 25th study of the experiment carried out in 1972, I think it beyond doubt demonstrated that actually overpopulation, overcrowding could lead to violent behavior. And that is really, I think, an issue that for us, as designer of the built environment, need to not only follow kind of the client's brief, but ask ourselves, are we designing something that is livable, suitable, for the community? And the city in history already mentioned that overcrowded physical congestion is something that we need to be very careful about. And it's not just the density, because density itself could be good, but it's the perception of overcrowding, where you cannot escape. So in Hong Kong, not only your own private cubicle is small, when you go down to the street, you cannot escape from kind of involuntary interaction. There's no place for you to really, be yourself. And Edward Hall, also Beyond Culture, book of 1989, he looked at how humans actually look at the urban built environment, and his conclusion is really that we have put ourselves into our own soup, and we cannot break out from it. So in Hong Kong, despite we have one of the highest growth in the past decades, and so our poverty rate is really very, very alarming. It has been going up, and in the latest government official figure, 2019, 1 out of 5 Hong Kongers they live below the official poverty line. Is this something that we want the city to continue like this? There are over 1.4 million people living below the official poverty line. And if you actually, count the at risk of poverty households, the population increased to 1.8 million. The Gini coefficient measuring the wealth gap has been going up all the time, and it is at a historical high that we have on record. So what happened? How come we have moved along this path? And since housing is something that affects livability, one of the major factors, I would just want to use housing as an example. After the handover, look at the housing provision target. Mr. Dong have done their study and they proposed 85,000 per year. Now, we have been reducing that figures since then. From 2014, we have already almost halved that to 47,000, and then a year ago, 2 years ago to 45,000, and recently we further reduced it to 43,000 flats per year. Is this something that is right? Does it mean that our population is growing slower? Therefore, yes, there is a genuine reason for lowering the target. But look at the people who is waiting to get on the public housing, subsidized housing. And I think the question is really for us to ask, with this type of housing policy, who is benefiting? Is it the community or someone else? And obviously, I think of historical kind of data, the private sector, private developer, they are the beneficiaries of this type of housing policy. It's not the community. And very much demonstrated by the biased housing policy, especially in the public sector. If you look at the application on public rental housing list, in 2004, there's only less than 100,000 applicants. Now, to 2019, 15 years, there's over 267,000. The increase is almost 300%. And again, the waiting time has prolonged from 1.8 years to 5.5 years. If you are saying that we don't need that much housing supply, then that figure actually should drop and not rise. So again, if you look at the Hong Kong poverty map, most districts actually is increasing in the poverty rate in the district. Some of them, like Kwun Tong, is close to 20%. And this is a photo I took a few days ago, in Wan Chai. People are really angry, really frustrated as what the government, our community has been doing. And again, I think somewhere along the path, we have actually erred into the wrong path. It is something that we need to correct. We need to actually bring the problem out for really communication and discussion to get on the right path again. And are we going to be sustainable on this type of past development model? My personal opinion is not. It is an unsustainable model. While Hong Kong is getting richer, the home is getting smaller, the urban space is getting more congested. The city is not for living, it's for business, it's for commerce. That is not what Hong Kong needs to do. So again, we also are facing additional challenges like double aging. Our population will be getting older and older, and by 2064, around 35% will be over 65. Not only our population is getting older, our buildings are also getting older. By 2046, 326,000 private housing units will be more than 70 years ago, more 70 years old. So it is actually 300 times, from the number in 2015. So again, I think for identity, we need to look beyond just the post-colonial Hong Kong identity. The issue at hand is really what happened after 2047. We cannot escape from that question, and it is being asked now by the community. So borrowed time is not just 1997. It's really beyond 2047. And just use a proxy of the market cap stock to actually illustrate the loss of community and the identity that we Hong Kongers feel. Right after the handover 1998, HSBC by capitalization is the biggest stock company in Hong Kong. And 10 years afterwards, it has dropped to 5th place, and you see actually the red capital, the PetroChina becomes the biggest corporation. And then another 10 years. Now you can see actually not only red capital but technology, they are coming up. So actually we are transforming from the identity of Hong Kong financial banking to state-owned enterprises, red capital, and technology. So this is the change that is inevitable. Again, that makes us feel uncomfortable because previously we have been business concentrated. We are a commercial city. We are losing our edge. From a peak of 27% of the China GDP, total contribution, we are down to 2.9% and even less than 2% now. So all of this actually make us very uncomfortable. But I see there are a lot of opportunities for us. And again, the Greater Bay Area, it seems to be a new idea, but really it is not. We have been actually participating, building the Greater Bay Area for a long, long time. If you remember, the manufacturing based in Hong Kong have moved up to Pearl River Delta a long time ago. We are part of the Greater Bay Area already. We have been doing all of this development in this area. And the economic power of the Greater Bay Area again is really opportunities for us. And we have the can-do spirit. We have entered difficult time in the past. Some of you may remember, back in the 60s, we have 4 hours of water supply every 4 days. And we come through that, difficulty. So my really question is for all of our build professionals, is that how can we empower the community with design, with architecture? We need to have a paradigm shift. So the architecture of the building become public good. It's no longer just to serve private clients. We need to be aware of the impact on the community. And it is really a tool to encourage, give inspiration for the community to change for better. And we can use architecture and design to reduce inequality, and actually also a very important part, for architects. We are the carrier of, culture. We can use architecture to communicate culture and actually enforce and also make our community much fairer. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. I think that's a perfect introduction to the Hong Kong conundrum. On the one hand, we have one of the kind of richest cities in front of us, and then we have the one of the largest income disparity. So, what do we do as architectural profession? Donald asked that question. Now, in fact, our second panelist today is the president of the Hong Kong Institute of Architects. So there is no better person than Felix to come and talk to us. Now, Felix was, in fact, he started practicing in '92 as an authorized person. He has a wealth of experience of both extremely large-scale projects all the way down to heritage renovation and so on. And Felix is the director of Farrows in Hong Kong. So let's give a big welcome to Mr. Felix Lee to share with us his view and passion of how architects can contribute.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everybody. This morning, first of all, thank you, RIBA Hong Kong chapter, to invite me to give a short sort of presentation. The topic is livability, project beyond Hong Kong. And I have a thought about it, and at the end, I decided I just share with you overall view about the Great Bay City and Hong Kong. So let you be the judge on compare the livability standard between Hong Kong and the other 9+1 city. Okay, what is the Great Bay Area? Basically, this is according to the central government thinking. It's one country, two systems, 3 custom territorial and 4 central city. But in short, most important is the free trade zone that are identified in the green and the central city, which consists of Hong Kong, Macau, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. If you look at the border picture, according to the World Bank information, actually the Great Bay Area, used to call the Pearl River Delta, will consist of going to be about 50 million of population, and this become one of the biggest mega city, they call it, the World Bank terminology, in Far East Asia. What's the effect of it? In terms of the Great Bay Areas consists of 9+2. Just to share with you, I think most of you will know well about 9+2 city. I just shared with you some very basic data. It consists of Hong Kong, Macau, and well-known Shenzhen, Guangzhou. And then also put together the 9 cities by Zhuhai, Jiangmen, Busan, Kaohsiung, Huizhou, Guangdong, and so on, 9+2. In terms of livability, let you be the judge. Hong Kong, we all know we are a very small city, but the population is close to 7.5 million. Similar comparison, Macau, of course, smaller than Hong Kong. The population is only 667,000. And then if you look at the 2 other most dense population cities, they are Guangzhou and Shenzhen, but with a much bigger area. Like Guangzhou, they, well, not just, right? They have 14.5 million, double of Hong Kong. But in terms of the area that they can develop, it's maybe 100 times bigger than Hong Kong. That's one aspect about comparison, the livability. Okay, and then the GPD, it just gives you. I understand we architects are more interested in the city landscape and the urban and the architectural development. But just share with you, this is one of the thinking of the central government about the driving force of the Great Bay Area, which is the GPD. And you can still see here Hong Kong is one of the top 3 GPD, have the top 3 GPD among the Great Bay Area, together with Shenzhen and Guangzhou. But more about the livability. Based on the some public domain source, I just do a very sort of quick comparison of the Great Bay Area. They are pretty much belong the same region in terms of the weather. They are pretty much the same. In terms of temperature, in the summer, it's ranging between mid-20 degrees Celsius. It's not much different. In terms of rainfall, it's a little bit of a difference from the Jiangmen, far western side of the Great Bay Area. We have much more rainfall compared to the northern part of the Great Bay Area. And this is at least some of the weather information about all the Great Bay Area, such as the drought and flooding issue, extremely precipitation, strong typhoon, and high temperature in the summer. That's why sustainability becomes a very important issue to Great Bay Area, in my opinion. It's not just the driving force of GPD. Then I list out some of the city character, just to share with you about how we international architects look into Great Bay Area. I understand that the nice city, they used to have their own sort of existing culture or environment sort of character. But I just purely looking from an international architect, about the new sort of development or among the nice cities. Shenzhen, this is they plan themselves as a world leader competing new skyline. Just in 2018, there are already another 14 skyscrapers that have been built, in addition to all the previous ones built before year 2018. And also, one of the character or one of the policy put on to Shenzhen is Qinghai Shenzhen Hong Kong Model Service Industry Corporation Zone, i.e. Most of the new building, new structure that is seen really driven by commercial requirement and complement with some of the culture or recreation facility. Zhuhai used to be, from my memory, very sort of a beautiful natural landscape, but recently also we see a lot of new developments. But one of the character about the city planning is they like to have group development model, i.e. they have a group of like high-rise building or complex building in between a green area. This is one of the urban sort of a character. And when the office doing a bit of research, we find one thing which I always I overlook myself as well, that the color of the building facade are mainly white and blue. This is very unique. I don't know it's whether the city planner or have their favor in terms of white and blue. And then Macau, I don't have to say too much about it. I think all of you know Macau about the landmark, hotel, recreation facility, etc. And then Zhongshan, it used to be a sort of a lively part sort of province or city, but now it also turned into, because of the economic change, they also want to be part of the Great Bay Area in terms of commercial or industry that create GPD. It also rapidly changing the cityscape as well. It used to be a very sort of lush green sort of city landscape. Now you can see a lot of new buildings coming up, commercial buildings I mean. Dongguan, it have a very extensive good transportation network in the past, mainly for the industrial area. And now it also turned into a sort of a big hub city to serve the industry. And then Huizhou, the eastern gate of Dongguan, it used to be consists of the city, over 60% landscape. But now it also changed because of the Great Bay Area policy. It developed also rapidly into like commercial and so on with a little bit of industrial zone. Xiamen used to be also a very old industrial town. Now it turned into also the same sort of, under the same policy, commercial, high rise. Guangzhou, it used to be the biggest city in the Great Bay Area. I don't have to introduce too much. One thing I just want to say is they just built another 400 high-rise building in 2 years' time. Amazing sort of speed and momentum. And then Busan is also used to be a sort of a very livable, in my opinion, livable city with great environment, low rise and so on. But recently, as you can see in the last few years, it also rapidly changing in the same direction. Thank you. Okay, I skipped some of them because of the time. Then I think I talk about livability. One of the issues is the transportation. I think all the Pearl Delta area is served well by the public transportation. That we have Hangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong Express Rail Line (XRL). We have the Lintong, the newly opened cross-border facility, and if you go beyond border Shenzhen, and that is connected by Nansha and also the Shenzhen Zhongshan Bridge as well. So it's a very sort of 1 hour sort of a living city zone that we're looking at. I've been to a lot of conferences across the border, and I try to understand the concept, why the government, the central government, I should say, developed come up with that Bay Area's idea. Instead of time, skip the first one. The central government have done some research about what is the character of the Great Bay Area, and it kind of draw references to at least three existing Bay Area in Tokyo, in New York, and so on. The characters are the beautiful marine ecology environment, and also the leading position in terms of the innovations in science and technology. We have that in the 9th city, in particular, if I'm not mistaken, Shenzhen. The engine of growth and development of both international and regional economics. Also is an important hub of global city and commercial network. The next one I quote from another not public domain sort of information, because I went to the conference and that's what they shared with me. You can see here they have Great Bay Area compared to Tokyo, compared to New York, and so on. And this, those are pretty pragmatic figures about GDP and about populations as well. So already Great Bay Area has the highest population. In comparison to the other, we are pretty much close to, if not over, most of the three existing sort of Bay Area around the world already. All right. I suppose to prepare that PowerPoint with RIBA Hong Kong chapter, and they asked me to talk about from an international architect point of view, what are the opportunities that that we have in the Great Bay Area. So just based on our office experience, I think that we can think about design competition, because for the 9 cities, there are a lot of design competition welcoming international architects. And also there's an opportunity to collaborate with a local design institute on competition. And then maybe just to set up registered practice in Hong Kong, because there are a lot of opportunity or policy that create for Hong Kong practice to be involved in Great Bay Area. Because of time, that's all I have for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip, for the eye-opening tour of the Bay Area. Our next panelist is Ruth. Ruth was, in fact, her training was actually in civil and structural engineering, but then I think she, in fact, her experience spanned from engineering and then to project management, and then more recently to strategic advice on both major and also local projects. Currently, Ruth is the regional director of Favor and Gold, based in Hong Kong, but her responsibilities all over Asia Pacific. Today, she would share with us her view of how can we have a citizen-centric policy making mechanism. And that indeed is probably at the center of the Hong Kong debate right now. So let's give a big welcome to Ruth.
everyone. Thank you to Roger and to Wendy and the Reba team for inviting me. You'll forgive me, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to read my notes so that I don't go over too far. I don't want to stop you all getting your lunch. Hong Kong is a great city. I love this city. I've lived here for 11 years. I was meant to be here for 1. Hong Kong is a prosperous city. It's full of opportunities for business, and it's efficient. I continue to be amazed at how efficient it is. It has a world-class public transport system and one of the highest life expectancies in the world. But it also faces many challenges. It has poor air quality and absolutely fundamental housing challenges, as Donald has described in quite detail. And of late, we all know it has significant social unrest. So I'd like to suggest a shift to how we address these issues of livability in Hong Kong and recommend that we take a more citizen-centric approach. We all know that the world's population is continuing to rapidly urbanize. According to the World Bank, almost 200 million people have moved into cities in East Asia alone in the last 10 years. Economies are rapidly transitioning up the value chain. This economic development has benefited many people, but also exerts great pressure on precious resources and aging infrastructure. The Gini coefficient that measures income inequality is the highest it's been. With higher life expectancy but falling birthing rates, there's stress on social welfare systems. Young people are struggling to adapt to these realities, with many abandoning traditional dreams of home ownership and upward mobility. Cities like Hong Kong are left to confront future challenges that no silver bullet can address. And for city-states and small-sized countries like Singapore and Qatar, much like Hong Kong, where there's just a single major metropolis, the challenge is even harder. Thank you. Amidst this backdrop, the balance of power has swung towards the individual. We live in an increasingly connected world. Consumers are able to exercise choices like never before. Empowered by advances in education and technology, people today demand greater transparency, participation, and customized solutions. Being born into a broken world, there is a push from young people to demand something different from the organizations around them. Sorry. What this means is that sustainability cannot be the only goal. It used to be that a win-win scenario was saving costs and reducing pollution. Now, a win-win is much more about achieving livability and sustainability. We're not just looking to drive down costs, we're looking to improve quality of life through how we design and operate our cities. They need to be a reflection of how people want to live. Creating places that feel like home, retaining and investing in the diversity, character, connectivity within our communities, not mass homogenization or rationalization, regardless of how efficient that might be. To make this happen, we, the individual citizen, need to be part of it. Sorry, and again. And again. Thank you. Next one, sorry. Up till now, urban development has been centered around the programs and services of organizations, kept tightly in check by government policy, procedure, and legislation. People didn't feature in the process other than being the receiver of the end program or service. When it comes to our communities, our social networks, our living and working conditions, and to the broader environmental and cultural conditions of where we live, work, and play, we should want to be part of it. Sorry. The challenge and opportunity for all of us is how can we address the human needs in ways that are technologically feasible, financially viable, as well as socially and environmentally sustainable. And again. In the past, it was impossible to say that we built for the needs of future users. But what if that is changing? Data will enable us to think differently about our cities. In recent years, emerging technologies have empowered new levels of design thinking. Advances in augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality enable us to vividly experience and empathize with the user's perspective. Not only can we immerse ourselves deeply in the problems, but we can also test possible solutions in a far more cost-effective manner. Big data analytics and artificial intelligence allow us to generate large data sets of user insights and identify behavioral patterns at scale. Algorithms and computational power also help us produce greater quantity of solutions faster and hopefully without bias. Unlocking the vast amounts of digital data generated by cities holds the promise of new, more open, citizen-centric, collaborative models of operation and advanced service delivery. So if we are addressing human needs, let's put the human at the center of it. If we solve all the citizens' problems first, and in doing this we motivate them to use digital tools in their daily life, then all of the data to make cities more user-friendly, energy efficient and sustainable will be available. Digital platforms can support more choice in spaces, services and means of transport. And effectively deployed, this will reduce transport emissions. Data platforms can support access to shared services, thereby avoiding unnecessary product ownership, and enables those shared products to be designed for the full and long product life cycle. If the platforms are user-friendly, then accessibility increases, which means the service and offering can be optimized to give citizens exactly what they want. Using a shared digital ecosystem to drive innovative, efficient and more sustainable solutions, optimizing the deployment and distribution of resources and creating more resilient, successful urban developments. So that's the theory. Now, how does that shape up in Hong Kong? In December 2017, Hong Kong published its Smart City Blueprint, a document focused on raising livability standards, and its mission statement is what's up here. Whilst Hong Kong's sustainability guidelines that were introduced in 1999 didn't make any reference to the people of Hong Kong, this blueprint does. It describes the smart city as people-centric, that should be built upon the needs of the people, with benefits that can be seen and felt by residents and visitors alike. The blueprint has 6 smart themes: mobility, living, environment, people, government, and economy. And there are some big targets and significant plans within this. It's working. Smart mobility. As you would expect, there's references to walking and cycling provisions, and there are initiatives to provide traffic data for cars and improving real-time data for those traveling on public transport. In smart living, there's the provision of free Wi-Fi, electronic payment systems, and electronic IDs. The big data analytics platform by the Hospital Authority for facilitating healthcare research was due last year, but only partially in place. An electronic healthcare system is due in 2022, aimed at facilitating patients' active management of their health. 67% of carbon emissions are from energy production. Focus on changing the energy mix in Hong Kong is the goal, to reduce the reliance on power from coal-fired power stations by 50%. 29% of carbon emissions are from buildings, and there are schemes for retrofitting LEDs and continuing with green building design. Sorry, not enough hands. Suspense. Smart people. The focus is on STEM education and investment in innovation. And for the smart government, there's talk about opening up data and to build a big data analytics capability across multiple departments. The launch of 5G infrastructure is also imminent. For the economy, while there's no specifics on a sharing economy, there are schemes relating to smart tourism and fintech. So some of these new initiatives need to be tested, and in Hong Kong, the government is taking the approach of using the Science Park in Kowloon East for several pilot projects. In Kowloon East, 8 proof of concept schemes have now been completed or in progress, and I'll quickly go through these. There's a personal and preference-based wayfinding for pedestrians, smart crowd management systems, energy efficient data systems, curbside loading monitoring system, smart recycling bins, multi-purpose lamp posts, real-time roadwork information, and illegal parking monitoring. But smart initiatives featuring recent technology and gadgets aren't what's going to make the difference. Whilst a proof of concept approach does provide valuable user engagement, much more is needed. As can be seen from the results of a recent KPMG Connected Cities survey, the people of Hong Kong place a high degree of importance on urban planning, but also express significant disappointment with what's been missing so far. Recently in Hong Kong, there has been an increased use of cars. The road bridge to Macau is one example of schemes that have encouraged this. What the people of Hong Kong want is tighter regulation on private cars and vehicles. In education, people want to be able to engage with lifelong learning, understanding the need for them to change to respond to the world around them. And there's insufficient funding for STEM education. In innovation, there's a major issue with limited access to funding for innovation and insufficient pro-innovation policies, which is telling by only 4% of startups focusing on smart city initiatives. Within the living environment, affordable housing, I can't even begin to touch on what Donald has spoken about, but I will happily discuss this issue again another time. But beyond that, planning doesn't really represent the user requirements of the general public, and landlords are behind in developing spaces that reflect tenant needs. In Hong Kong, there's a particular lack of public-private partnerships when compared to other cities in healthcare, and there's a general overall shortage in healthcare facilities, particularly those relating to preventative, smart, citizen-centric healthcare, something of significant importance to an aging demographic. For energy, the focus has been on supply, not managing demand, for almost all of Hong Kong's resource needs. There is much needed to be done on demand-side management, and only smart meters are only just being installed now. So I'm afraid that's not a great report card, but maybe we can take a look at some other more positive examples. Singapore's housing department is piloting monitoring and alert systems to support safety and quality of life for the elderly. The sensors will monitor for unusual activity and notify relatives or neighbours. This is addressing key concern for Singapore residents who are especially worried about making their living environment more accommodating for the elderly or disabled. In Dubai, the Smart City government has launched a customer experience lab to support direct engagement with citizens. The lab is channeling customer feedback to government entities, enabling better understanding and segmentation of citizens and public service design based on citizen, not government needs. And finally, officials in Copenhagen are exploring how to combine public and private data to create innovative solutions. Copenhagen's vision is to derive significant insights by blending large quantities of traffic, energy, housing, waste, weather, and other factors to shape quality of life. So what can Hong Kong do? There needs to be changes, and there needs to be more focus on its citizens. We can look at becoming leaders in technology adoption in order to engage with citizens, to inform policy and design services to meet citizen needs. Expanding the use of data and analytics to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of service delivery. Placing greater emphasis on sustainability and resilience, and ensuring these are core parts of project planning and development. Increasing the collaboration between public and private sectors in the development and application of smart city solutions. And what about us? As those of us with invested interest in the built environment, what can we do? We should embrace the idea of the citizen-centric mindset. Think about how saving people time, providing more choice, and being easier to use will naturally lead to a more livable, sustainable city. Consider it to be a way to differentiate yourselves and of positively shaping the future of Hong Kong for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, a lot of the work we currently do are for our next generation. After all, that is what sustainability and livability are supposed to be there for. But what do the next generation think about all this? Today we have one of our foremost emerging architect in Hong Kong. Manfred, he runs his a co-founder of Groundworks. Today, Manfred will talk about how young architects, the future generation architects, see all this, especially through the view and the lens of social responsibility. So please welcome Manfred.
Hi, everybody. Yes, please. So, I have a confession to make, and that wait, okay. So, thank you. 2 years ago, we have decided to move to start a branch, and we decided to go to Shenzhen. We did math very easily. The population of China is 200 times of Hong Kong's. So it's natural that we wanted to do, if we want to do good work, we move to somewhere interesting. And we go to and it's close enough to Hong Kong. That's before the high-speed rail kicks in. And since the high-speed rail kicks in, which takes me 14 minutes from ICC to Futian station, I decided to move to China with my team there. So we have 2 offices now. For the past 12 months, I was in Shenzhen, and I met a bunch of very interesting people. I befriended some of the most innovative architects in the region, and I have been talking to a lot of developers. And you know what? They invited me to these dinners at the end of the year. Every year they have these shows, right? At the dinner in China, do you know that? Right? 这是叫那个春茗啊，春茗。Every show, they have, at every dinner they have these shows, right? The company of architects. And you know what they do? Every session have this satirical show that mocks developers. So that they will always reenact, show how they've been rushing for the deadlines, and the developers have been the evil, and they are always demeaning them, laughing at them. Every session, it has this episode, right? So I thought to myself, what is our identity? What is our job? And why are we doing all this? We are inspired, trained, spending 6 years in our lives in an education of brutality, really. We work overnight for what? For ideals, right? We want to build, we want to do better things for the future. And I think these Shenzhen architects are no different than us. But they have been always, frankly, slaves of a lot of developers in China, especially in China, where the respect for architects are much lower than Hong Kong. At least that's what I experienced. So I just want to show you some sort of works that some friends are doing. The work are mainly social because I categorize it into four categories. They're visionary. They're creating frameworks for things to happen, like, for example, a great school, innovative school, for example. They're involved in public engagements, and most important of all, they're involved in heritage, with preservation of existing urban fabrics and interesting buildings. Zhang Xiang is now a good friend. He graduated from Harvard and now running his project office in-game. I attended a TED Talk with him last month in Shenzhen. Now his work is now being showcased at the Shenzhen Urban and Architectural Biennale at the building done by Kupin Blau. This model is a very radical solution to a very interesting idea. If you want to preserve the villages, Changzhongchuan, okay? Why don't you build above it? And you create this really radical idea of how you can preserve cities by simply building above them. Not red, so that's it. It's really easy. And you're focusing how the work, the light there can be very flamboyant, very happy. Great. He Jianchang is someone I met from Guangzhou. He's one of the leading architects in there, actually in China these days. He built his latest school, Hongling 学校, is a primary school, experimental one. And just look at it, it's beautiful. And I think the picture speaks more than itself. He Jisun is I call him Dr. He Jisun. He's now an honorary professor at MIT. He runs a gallery, a museum. And he did is on a village in Shenzhen. He created into a little village, not only by the people around, but by the market hawkers inside. So they're allowing the hawkers to participate in arts, and they took the photos of their hands. So just to show how their work and their livelihood are being appreciated. Simple acts of kindness and art and beauty allows empowerment for the little hawkers inside, who are usually being underlooked, the livelihood of being underlooked. Li Fu is an architect in Shenzhen. He did a lot of big works, but he spared part of the work on social agendas. So on the Biennale in Shenzhen 2 years ago, he created this little chair that allows the villager to cluster at time if they wanted to. He deliberately used these tiles that are endeared to the surrounding environments. It's a little design, and he won the best of best red dot design in Germany, right? Red Dot's Germany. So it's really about a gesture to celebrate the locality and heritage, no matter how mundane or how banal it appeared to be. Chu Fei is now an associate professor at the Shenzhen University. Her work is her teaching as well. She taught her students to engage with the community, work with them, understand the needs, draw as simple as possible so that the villagers can understand, allows them to work on chairs, recycling materials, and create art from them. And they're beautiful. They're now at the SeaWorld Cultural and Art Center at the Circle. The exhibition just left. But it was beautiful. It was just simple art. They are all done by little kids, grannies, and nobodies. Jie Qing is, she was trained in Hong Kong. He moved back to Shenzhen. She also teach, and she created these wonderful little gestures of humor, on an urban level. Just simple little abstract urban furniture that doesn't even make any sense, but has an abstraction of an animal. But the kids love it, and they were extremely popular because they were allowing the kids to appropriate themselves on these arts or furniture. So the book is really about placemaking. Finally, we have Jason. Jason, again, British trained, Saad lead, and he has his firm, Turtle Hill, creating great pieces of planters that they're movable, they're on tracks, and they can appropriate themselves into the public squares, and therefore placemaking. Now, I just used 5 minutes to explain some of the works I've seen. These people were all foreign educated. They were all doctors. They were all Ivy Leagues and top-notch people. They're all in Shenzhen. They were all doing this because they felt their identity belongs not just to be working with developers. Therefore, they spend a bit of the time on social responsibility. And this is growing because teachers are teaching this in schools. And you ask yourself, well, is Shenzhen or the Greater Bay Area a better place eventually if leaders like architects should be leaders, are advocating these small gestures one by one. And imagine if the population of China is 200 times Hong Kong's, what would that be? Now, as an outsider, so I was outside, now I'm insider. We are actually quite accustomed to social innovations. Actually, again, Sarah, why are you Sarah? Hi. Sarah's work is great. She engaged the community. We do some of that too, and because we were quite acquainted with social issues. Again, I don't want to bore you with these, but you know why we're showing this. This photo has been the most shown photos on seminars in Hong Kong. Donald did. Every time I hear a seminar in Hong Kong, we show this Michael photo. And because we are living in such poor place, in poor conditions, our mission, our social missions, has been ingrained into our education since we were in school. So the disparity between our social obligations and what we're doing is the gap is much thinner. But in China, you're not educated to have social innovations. So, but they are doing that right now. So, in all due respect, I just want to show you a bit of my work recently in China. Although we're building schools and we're building parks and we're building stuff in hotels in China, we spent a part of our work on a very simple manifesto. It's called happiness. Of course, we did some work for Hong Kong, using the publications, and we use these techniques to create better places. But through these discourses, I realized one thing. You know what makes people happy in architecture and in a city? Is the relationship. It's sometimes very often neglected. Is how people are. It's not relationship that makes people happy. It's not actually the object. So we were trained to build a little red house for a dog. We're trained to build houses, right? But I look at it a different way. I think architecture should be an aquarium. We're building aquariums, but we're also building with the fish. But it's really the water that is important. Is it the water that allows us to be much happier people in this place? If the water's murky, the fish won't be happy. So we were thinking, again, what is our responsibility? Are we making buildings or are we making architecture? Does water, the analogy that I've used, is about the good relationship and therefore trust and therefore joy. And we looked in that subject a bit harder by writing through this process where we wrote the guideline for the future playgrounds in Hong Kong. We spent 2 years doing that, interviewing thousands of people. And we realized that the kids are not happy because they were playing. They're happy because they're establishing a good relationship with their parents and with their friends, with the object of the nature. Good architecture and good urban setting allows good relationship to foster. And it was the relationships that allows kids to be really happy. So again, our company has some spare capacity, so why don't we do an exhibition? So we thought, okay, if we talk about happiness, we talk about relationship, can architecture be toys? Do you know this? Okay, we all know this. This is Totoro. The Totoro is friendly, is reliable, is interactive. When you ask him for favors, he will actually help you. They're adventurous and they're surreal. They're a perfect toy, okay? Totoro is a perfect toy, perfect friend. So 2 years ago, we had an exhibition in K11. We tried to flood the space with an inflatable. And we were turning a space into a soft toy, okay? So the whole toy becomes the architecture, and the whole space has to soften up. And some of you here went to our thingy, and I hope you had a good time. And Vanka acknowledged this, so they were saying, why don't we do this in Shenzhen for us? So I created this little cat. The cat looks at the fish, but the fish is too big to eat. But the fish allows kids to go in and play. It's a friendly fish. So this is. I deserve 1 more minute, okay? Because I'm interested in things which interesting. Boom! Just knocked down. So it's about taking risks, okay? It's about taking risks. Then obviously we're interested in architectural discourses too, because we are actually turning spaces into something else. But it's really about the observations that triggers us. Look at the minute little gestures that allows us to understand why space is interesting. This girl has been practicing this for 20 times, okay? 20 times. She articulated this jump. I'm almost done. And they were just simply very happy. And even this is actually quite good to look at as a picture. So all the parents are actually sitting there just looking at them. Just looking at them and taking pictures and therefore being happy. So, well, we were doing this in Shenzhen because it was so popular. The adults were also there. So this is Zhang Jiang, the guy who made the model, and he also came and played. And there were so many people who came, not only just kids but also adults, because they're not to play. They were here to take photographs. So it's an adult play. It's taking photographs, sharing the joy. And there's also a place where adult becomes children again. So the architecture becomes a vehicle or the apparatus for adults to be children again. So again, this is the hard stuff. Okay, this is the architecture behind it. But I'm not going to prepare to talk about this today. I just want to stress this. It's from the people that I met in Shenzhen. We are now operating as architects with social responsibilities. We are all looking at a few things. It's the relationship. We're no longer building meccas. We should not be building skyscrapers for nothing. We should be focusing on what's inside, the joy, the sustainability, the relationship of people, the engagement of different people inside. And okay, this is it. We are having another exhibition in China now, so if you're interested, very, very welcome. But we are mixing it with immersion's experiences. So this is happening right now in China, and we are building another hill. Okay, all in all, I hope we can build better water instead. Thank you.
Manfred and all our speakers. Now I would like to invite all our speakers up to stage for a group discussion led by Christopher Law. While they do that slowly, I will introduce to you an event in collaboration with Groundwork with the RIBA as the supporting organizer, an event called Walk Walk Nonstop. It's a one-day tour to Shenzhen on the 29th of February 2020. And the starting point of this tour will be at the Biennale Hong Kong Pavilion at Futian Station, and we'll probably have Roger Wu himself come take us on the tour. And then after that, after lunch, Groundwork will then take us on the tour around Wanke Design Commune and the Seed World Cultural and Arts Center that you just saw. So anyone who's interested, please come talk to me later or visit our Facebook page, or we have a reception downstairs later, and if you see anyone with this badge, you can go talk to them. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand the stage over now to Chris.
Right, so we've got five chairs. Well, shall we sit kind of closer? Well, let's do we have enough microphones? Now, this is really the time for discussion, and this is also the time for you to tell us what you think, and also ask our panelists anything you would want to ask. Well, in fact, before today's session, Wendy told me that my job is to bring everyone back to the theme of today's symposium, which is livability and identity. So I would, in that case, start with a question on identity. Well, identity, as we all know, is a very, very interesting thing. On one hand, as architect and urbanist trained in kind of placemaking, we want to help build identity. But the last 6 months also led us to suddenly wake up to the power of identity politics. So suddenly we have people who would kind of build so-called kind of yellow economy with a very strong identity. We also have increasingly people who would say that, well, we want to recover Hong Kong, yeah, and also now that kind of identity building actually suddenly fly in the face of neoliberalism, fly in the face of the kind of third way idea of managing using kind of social inclusion. Because if you have social inclusion, well, the people who are kind of shouting they want to recover Hong Kong are actually least likely to want social inclusion, because that's the last thing they want to see. So today, I really want to start with a question, asking our panelists, how do you see identity as an issue in the building of livability? What is your personal view of how to handle this issue of identity as a professional? So can I have one of our panelists, or in fact, eventually I want to hear from more than one of our panelists on this issue.
Well, I will start first. I think the identity loss, or kind of a loss in translation or transition of Hong Kong, is that we are no longer authentic to understand ourselves. We are trying to impose a foreign image, foreign character into our society. Again, I think we are trying to be too homogeneous. And Hong Kong identity from the past up to now is diversity. It's something that we, as a community, we have been very flexible and accommodating and inclusive in a lot of ideas. We have been very passionate about the disadvantaged population coming into Hong Kong. We look at how the population has been increased right after World War II, and how the community come together to help each other. And again, we are not saying that because we have progressed so far, therefore there should be just one type of Hong Kong identity. So I think this is something that I personally think that we have lost that type of compassion and accommodation of different identities that could coexist in Hong Kong.
So diversity is the basis of the Hong Kong identity. Any view on that?
I guess I took maybe an engineer's view of this and a technology view of this, so I apologise, architects. There are a huge number of views and a huge number of different types of people within Hong Kong, and engaging with that number of people is very difficult. So I guess my view of it was to leverage technology to do that, to have more people engage and provide their data in whatever format, so whether that's their living patterns, their preferences, their choices, and collect that through a technology forum that then allows visibility of that diversity and that identity. I'm sure some people would disagree with that. They say that's loss of privacy and things like that, but you gain your identity through putting your footprint on things that then allows more customization, more adaptability, more choice, by being able to see and analyze the data.
So it's really kind of putting the individual identity on the sea of data, yes. So that hopefully the government being a really responsive government, would then take up those needs of the citizens.
That's the hope.
Yeah, Manfred's going to say something.
Maybe I'll drop the bombshell. I think I agree with Donald. I think we were good because we were diversified, and we took around 50 years to come to today since World War II, where we have an influx of immigrants. And when you're just Chinese, your grave always engraved where you came from when you die, right? So mine is still Sen Hui, right? So it's not Hong Kong. So we were now Hong Kong, right? So this whole kind of identity is seminal. We had a seminal stage of collective identity / connective memories, right? Because we went through so much. But that is now twisting into bigotry, because when you believe yourself so much, then you start to deny the other things, right? And that's a very painful process. That is a painful process that I think most civilization or cities or countries have went through. There's a brief period of bigotry, and it's about denial, it's about we are the best, it's nationalism really. But when you see, but it's a cycle. I like history. I like any history. You try to read this, you try to rationalize it. It's always like this. And therefore, for a better identity or for more compassion and more understanding, we must go through this process. It's painful, but let's understand that this is necessary. It's not the end. It's only the process. So I hope China is doing this exact same thing. China is now clustering their collective memories, right? Again, the friends you've seen, I introduced, we all share some collective memories, like the Nintendos that we play. When I whistle Mario Brothers, they understand. But why do you don't have Nintendos at the table, right? Yeah, but we have. You just don't know, right? So I think they are at we progressed it, right? But we are now the pendulum is swinging to the other side. I think we just got to accept the fact that this is a process. And let it be.
So we probably have to get through this learning curve.
Like a fever. Yeah, like a fever.
Yeah, I think Felix was going to say something.
Yes, I agree with the speakers about the strength of Hong Kong. Diversity is one of the strengths of Hong Kong. But for the last few months, I think what lacked is the inclusiveness between different ideas. I'm saying really on all sort of the different fashions. Just to remind everybody, as Donald said, Hong Kong built from a city, fishery-rich city, into a metropolitan capital or city, based on many different cultures, right? And it now, I think, as I show in my short PowerPoint presentation, I think if you look at it purely from an urban point or architectural point of view, we look pretty similar. Yeah. But what Hong Kong identity should be, I think it's not just diversified, it's the inclusiveness. And also not just looking into GDP, economic data, otherwise we just kind of merge into like one big zone, or whatever they call it, Great Bay Area, or a few years ago, Pearl Delta Bay, etc. I think that we really have to think hard, in particular after the last few months of events, about how to bring Hong Kong people back into the used to be sort of harmonious, live together, respect each other, even different thinking. I think it's absolutely okay, because this, to me, is one very sort of a unique character that Hong Kong has. You can express your idea, your opinion, without any sort of fear or whatever. I think this is one of the unique identity or character that Hong Kong really have to get back into.
Any view from the audience? fact, if you let's great.
There's one there.
Yes,
yeah,
go.
I was just thinking and speaking freely. I'm somebody who's born and grew up in Hong Kong, and then I went to England for the last part of my high school education and first degree university. Then I was in the States, and I liked London a lot. I went back to live in London, but because of family obligation, I came back to live in Hong Kong. On the topic of identity, I have to say, I find that I don't identify with Hong Kong, and I don't feel it has an identity. Through my life, I can see it breaking out of the British colonial identity. Then, because of the economic growth, it was desperate to acquire its international identity. Now I see, because the Chinese cities, the major cities, have also caught up with us, then our pride as being an international city in this part of the world has died. Somewhat. It's not completely dead. But as Felix says, the last few months, a large part of the citizen is telling us that they don't feel that their identity is reckoned with, that the people who are in control of the city are not listening to them. So that I feel, in fact, this panel has been touching on the subject, which I feel is fairly crucial for Hong Kong to move forward. We need to find a way to be inclusive and to hear the voices of the people. Right now, I kind of feel there's a lot of anger and emotion that is involved around issues that are very simple and easily identifiable. As to what makes life livable is something that's very difficult, I think, for the protest to sort of rally around, because it can be so diverse. But this is precisely where architects can come in. How to make the city livable in so many different ways. I remember admiring when I was a young child how innovative, in fact, Southern Chinese people are. I don't know the North so well then. How they're able to use a very small space and adapt it to make a life for families. I grew up at a time after the war. My parents are struggling, or were struggling, to make a living for the family. We were a large family, and our extended family, many of them have suffered during the war, and were all having to be embraced by my father. And there is tremendous innovation, creativity in how to make life livable. And we all had a happy time. I remember those times were happy because we felt that we can be contributing or innovative. And there is a lot more sense of community in helping our neighbors, our extended family, and friends. I mean, everybody's helping everybody else. I kind of feel that that is something that is not so easy to define, but nevertheless is where the architect is well placed to facilitate.
So I sense that the audience would probably feel that would probably feel that, well, let's get on with the most important thing, that is livability. Yeah? Maybe this identity thing is a bit kind of overplayed. It gets into the way. Before we ask the panelists to have their kind of last word, is there anyone in the audience who has a burning question, who has something that you really, really want to say, but you have not got the opportunity to say today? Yes?
I think Roger and the steering committee organized this symposium. When we talk about this, actually, we wish this symposium would come up with something that could guide us forward in terms of livability, which is a very important subject. And this subject actually relates to very complicated questions in the context of Hong Kong. And Donald actually has pointed out the issues of our area per square meter, and also the our issues of the land supply. So just go back to some very fundamental things in the context of Hong Kong is we compare to Singapore. Oh, they have a buildable area of over 70%, but in Hong Kong we only build 30% of our land. So since we have such a wide spectrum of speaker here, so if possible, then I would like to hear the opinion of the speaker about this current situation. Now we have a lot of vacant agricultural land, country park actually suppose we cannot touch, and also some obsolete industry. But our government is saying, oh, we don't have enough land, and we go ahead to reclaim 1,000 hectares. So since actually today we also have some government officials sitting in the floor, so I would like to ask the speaker to share your opinion, in particular the younger generation, that yours view about how we can deal with this situation of the land shortage.
Yes, Joe's question is land shortage. Now, since we only have a limited amount of time left, as Roger mentioned, in fact, we'd love to hear from all of our panelists. So please be a little bit brief. So, should we start with Felix?
Sure. I think we've been discussing that issue many times. I think, in my opinion, or from all the conferences or meetings that I attend, Hong Kong people love to keep the country park, the 73% or more about the Hong Kong Island. I think the government to start. I want to go back to this livability issue as well. I think what we lack is a vision from the government. If we have a vision about Hong Kong livability, people may not against any one of the 18 sort of choices that we have tabled by the government about how to obtain 7,000 hectares of land. It's lack of vision. Lack of vision and lack of consultation, if I may say. Community consultation that will gather the support from the public on any land reclamation or whatever touch of the fringe land, the fringe of the country park issues. I think it's not about which option that we go for. It's a process. It's the vision from the government that I keep talking about it, through the Hong Kong IA capacity, and about the consultation process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't agree with the narrative of lack of land in Hong Kong. I think it's myth is a story to actually achieve certain agenda that the government has in mind. Yep. Again, I think we lack responsible policy on the use of land. That is what is lacking. Our land use hasn't been really be catered for the community needs, not to mention the livability. We have certain archaic usage of land. For example, the agricultural land that is in reserve and kind of being sold without any consideration of the modern community needs. If you just look at the recent kind of developer who right away can able to lease or loan some of the land out for houses.
Yes, true.
Right? I mean, we do have land. So I think it's really a responsible use of those land according to the community needs.
I agree with Donald. I think it's about land distribution. It is very opaque now. The process has never been transparent. So that's first things first. Second is, I think we have been over-governing sometimes on the stuff like parks. I'm involved in parks, and you can't play ball, you can't smoke, you can't date, you can't kiss, you can't. Oh, come on! Like, this is not harvesting good relationship. This is simply just statistic, really, on stuff. So we have been over-governing, and that's not doing any good. it's not like Singapore. You should let things breathe and let things fermentate and let things rust a bit, you know. Third, I think, is about education. I think we're not educating our kids to think more than what they can do. Like technology, I embrace it. Yeah. But we're not teaching them all that. We're teaching them physics and biology and chemistry still. So, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to be quick. I agree. I very much agree with what Donald has just said. I think there's a huge opportunity for some really good urban planning in Hong Kong to make use of the resources that we have. I always laugh at the term reclamation as if somehow we're taking back something that the sea took for us. We're not reclaiming it, we're taking it. It doesn't belong to us. We should make use of what we have better. I live in a village in South Lantau, so I see how haphazard we use some of our very, very precious and most beautiful spaces. So I believe there's a vast opportunity for creative urban designers and planners to do better with what we have.
So there you have it from our panel. We need the right vision, the right policy, light touch regulation, good education, and capacity building. So let's give our panelists a big hand for their pearl of wisdom today, and then we'll see you after lunch.
We didn't have the chance to take some photos. Can we have all the speakers from the first session, as well as Eugene? Just take a quick question, and then I'll do a quick summary of this morning, and then we'll go to lunch. I promise it's just 2 minutes.
We want to talk.
There we go.
One step. Yeah. Okay, and these two gentlemen, please a little bit backward, right? Yeah, a little bit, very little bit. Okay. Yeah. Okay, nice. Okay, see here. Big smile. Oh, sorry, this lady is a little bit backward. Only you is okay. Yeah, you're all right. Okay. Okay, see here. Cheers. One more. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to take the time to do a quick summary for this morning. It's great hearing everything, and well, there's a lot of things we talked about, which is great because I have a homework, as Eugene says, that I need to summarize it. Hopefully, it becomes some sort of legacy document that those who want to listen to this can refer to it. These are the issues that we talked about, and I think we would be. We'll be interested to hear what you have to say as well. So in a minute, you will see our QR code for our website, as well as for our Facebook page, as well as a questionnaire. We would like to hear what you have to say as well. I know a lot of people are itching to say something, but we just didn't have the opportunity to be able to say something. You can write an essay if you want. You can write just 2 words, very good, very bad. Whatever it is, we'd like to hear. I think one of the commitments we have for this biennale is call it a listening biennale. We really want to hear what you have to say. Very long, very short, very good, very bad. We will be happy. So, without further ado, I think it's time for lunch. I'll let you have 45 minutes for lunch, and then we'll be back here at around 2 o'clock, and we will make a start for the afternoon. Thank you very much.
有啲做，我睇出有啲做嗰啲。
Yeah, I spent the whole weekend I did my weekly
just now. This week is the study.
Right, yeah.
Good to meet you. Thanks for meeting me.
I'll try.
This is the central side of the we have a photo landscape. Usually you have to pay for mine when you guys.
Where do I go? Come in. This way?
Okay, thanks. All right, thanks for coming. 即係呢個水，呢個水。
Right. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes, yes, hi. Hi. GBA, that's what densifying or expansion or so I have to get further distribution. Yeah, track. That's why I'm here today. Yeah, the boss. Yes. Okay, great. Right. She's having dinner with Liveability or wherever. So we should go ahead. If you guys want to have lunch. Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen him for years. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah. You want to see if there's a short lunch? We can keep talking. Don't want to interrupt. Yeah. I just wanted to see the last time you simple. Oh, yeah. Oh, right. How are you? I am a vegan at the moment.
Ây da, 唔記得咗撳。